Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Jung's words cut like a blade, and when you hear them, something inside you stirs. Because deep down, you know your attraction has never been an accident. It is not random. It is not simply beauty, charm, or timing. It is the shadow pulling you, the wound choosing for you, the past playing itself in disguise. Think about the last time you felt that lightning spark, the way your body leaned forward before your mind caught up. You told yourself it was chemistry. You said, "This feels right." But why did it feel right? Was it because she truly saw you, or because her presence echoed someone you once longed for and could never reach? Attraction is not just desire, it is memory dressed in new skin. The truth is unsettling. Attraction is magnetic, but the magnet is buried inside your unconscious. It drags you toward people who resemble what you already know, even if what you know is pain, a harsh voice, a distant silence, a familiar coldness. It can all feel like home because it mirrors what raised you. What pulls you is not her smile or her beauty, but the hidden resemblance to your unfinished story. This is why Jung's warning is so dangerous and so liberating. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You've called it destiny. You've called it soulmates. You've called it love at first sight. But maybe it was never love. Maybe it was the wound, dressed up as fate, demanding to be lived again. You meet her, and without realizing it, you hand her the script you've been carrying since childhood. She doesn't know it, but she's already playing a role written long before she arrived. Imagine a man who grew up with a mother who withheld warmth, who loved in fragments, who was present but unreachable. Years later, he meets a woman who is breathtaking, but emotionally distant. His chest tightens, his pulse quickens, and he tells himself, she must be the one. Yet what he is really saying is, she feels like home. He confuses the ache of recognition with the joy of love. And so the wound decides. This is the secret your attraction doesn't tell you. It feels alive, but it may be a trap. It feels holy, but it may be history repeating itself. You thought you were choosing freely. You weren't. The choice was made long ago, in the shadows of your earliest years, and unless you see it, you'll live it again and again. But here is where the story shifts, because once you bring the unconscious into the light, attraction itself begins to change. No longer a blind magnet, it becomes a mirror you can read. You see her not as destiny, but as reflection. And in that moment, the cycle breaks. So understand this. What you call love at first sight may be your wound whispering, "Come closer, so I can replay myself." But now, you have the chance to pause, to see through the illusion, to stop mistaking repetition for love. What I feel is not always fate. What I see is not always true. I choose to see beyond the wound. You tell yourself it's love. You feel the rush, the spark, the calm that says, I know this person. But pause. Why does she feel so familiar when you've only just met? Jung warned us the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Yet what if the transformation is not growth, but repetition? What if what feels safe is only the echo of something you already survived? The first illusion is familiarity. You are drawn to her because she feels like home, but home wasn't always safe. The way she looks at you, the way she pulls back just slightly, it reminds you of something buried deep. Maybe it was the way your mother's affection arrived in fragments, warm one day, cold the next. Maybe it was the silence of a father who was present in body but absent in soul. That rhythm, the dance of closeness and distance, becomes your comfort zone. And so when you meet her and she carries that same rhythm, Your body calls it love, but it is not love. It is a memory of wearing perfume. It is trauma disguised as chemistry. The second illusion is the savior complex. Without knowing it, you search for the one who carries the same wound as your parent, believing that this time you can heal it. A woman with sharp edges, unpredictable moods, or unreachable emotions pulls you in. You don't run, you lean closer. Why? Because inside you the child still whispers, maybe this time I can make her stay. Maybe this time I will have enough. This is why people cling to partners who hurt them. They are not in love with the person. They are in love with the possibility of rewriting history, but history does not rewrite itself. It repeats until you decide to put down the pen. The third illusion is projection. You think you see her, but you don't. You see your shadow painted onto her skin. The qualities you buried, your softness, your longing, your unexpressed rage, suddenly blaze inside her image. You fall, not for who she is, but for what you've denied in yourself. She becomes the stage where your unconscious performs its forgotten play. You call her soulmate, but really she is a mirror, and mirrors are dangerous when you mistake them for reality. Do you see the danger now? What you thought was love may have been nothing more than recognition of your past, replayed in a new body. Comfort is not always true. Familiarity is not always safe, and intensity is not always love. What I thought was love was only a memory. What I choose now is the truth. The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well. Jung knew what most people never dare to face. Your attraction is not always chosen by you. It is chosen by your wounds. The shadow writes the script, and you act it out, calling it destiny. The child inside you is never gone. You wear adult clothes, speak adult words, carry adult responsibilities, but inside still lives the little one who once cried for love that never came. That child remembers every silence, every rejection, every cold shoulder. And those memories become a compass, not a conscious one, but an invisible force pulling you toward what is unfinished. This is why you meet her and feel something so powerful, so undeniable. It isn't just her presence, it's the wound inside you whispering, she is the one. But what it really means is, she is the one who carries the echo of what broke me. The wound chooses, the pain decides. You only feel the fire and mistake it for love. Jung taught that we project our inner world outward. He called it anima and animus, the inner feminine in men, the inner masculine in women. Whatever you repress in yourself does not vanish. It waits, and then it leaps onto someone else's face. But here is the danger. The wound that chooses you does not seek healing through comfort. It seeks repetition. It pulls you into the same pattern again and again. If you were abandoned, you'll find the one who withdraws. If you were criticized, you'll crave the one who judges. If you were unseen, you'll fall for the one too blind to notice you. You think it's fate. You think it's love. But it is the shadow dragging you back into the storm. This is the dangerous cycle Jung warned about. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You repeat what hurt you, because the psyche believes that if you can finally survive it, the wound will close. But it never closes that way. It only deepens. Look at your own history. How many times did you tell yourself, this is different, only to realize you had returned to the same heartbreak, in a new disguise, different faces, same silence. Different eyes, same rejection, different name, same abandonment. The cycle is merciless until you see it for what it is. This is not love. This is the shadow replaying the old film, projecting it onto the screen of your life until you recognize the pattern and step out of the theater. What you call attraction may simply be the wound pulling the strings, the child inside reaching out to the familiar pain. But once you see it, the spell weakens, and the choice returns to you. I see the wound that was chosen for me. Now I choose for myself. The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. Jung's warning feels cruel when you are standing in the rubble of what you thought was love, because this is where the illusion collapses. The attraction that once burned like fire now turns to ash in your hands, and the person who once seemed like salvation now reveals the same shadows that broke you long ago. The shattering of fantasy comes without warning. One moment, she is everything, beautiful, mysterious, intoxicating. The next, you hear the sharp tone in her voice, the same one you grew up fearing, or you feel the withdrawal of her affection, the silence that reminds you of the nights you begged for attention that never came. Your body knows before your mind accepts it. This is not new love. This is old pain, replayed. The illusion cracks, and through the cracks you see the truth, that the perfect partner is only the perfect mirror of your unfinished wounds. And in that moment, heartbreak feels like betrayal, despair feels endless. You don't just lose her, you lose the fantasy you built around her, the dream you thought would finally save you. Then the collapse deepens. Because when attraction fails, it is not only your relationship that crumbles, it is your identity. You start to question everything. If she didn't love you, are you belovable at all? If the one you thought was different turns out the same, what does that say about you? You look in the mirror and see not yourself but fragments. A broken reflection scattered in pieces. Attraction was never just about her. It was about you, about the story you tell yourself of who you are. And when it fails, that story falls apart. You feel worthless, unseen, abandoned again. This is not just heartbreak, it is identity in ruins. But here is the paradox. The collapse, as devastating as it feels, is also necessary. Jung taught that the old self must die for the new self to emerge. Like a tower struck by lightning, the false image must fall so that something truer can rise. This breaking is not punishment, it is initiation. You are being forced to face what you could not face before. You are standing at the cliff's edge, staring into the abyss, terrified to step forward. Yet it is only in that darkness that rebirth becomes possible. Without the collapse, you would stay trapped in illusions forever. With it, you are given a chance to rebuild, not on the fragile foundation of fantasy, but on the solid ground of truth. This pain is the price of transformation. This collapse is the door to freedom. What breaks me now will not end me. I am falling apart, only to rise whole. What we call fate is in truth nothing but our own inner necessity. Jung's words expose the cruelest trick of the psyche. What you thought was love may never have been love at all. It was your wound, dressed in perfume, whispering like destiny. The unconscious, desperate to heal itself, drags you back to the same scene again and again. You fall for her, not because she is your future, but because she resembles your past. The harsh tone, the cold silence, the unpredictable warmth. It all feels strangely right, and you tell yourself it must be love. But it isn't love. It is the repetition of pain, disguised as passion, the old story replayed under a new name. Then comes the tearing away of the veil. The moment you realize the truth feels both devastating and liberating. You look back and see the pattern clearly. It wasn't romance, it was recognition. You weren't drawn to her soul. You were drawn to the echo of your wound. You thought you wanted her, and this is where freedom begins. Once you strip away the illusion, the spell breaks. What once held power over you now appears for what it was, a mirror of your pain. The chains loosen, the cycle weakens, and for the first time you can imagine a love not born of wounds, but of wholeness. You no longer confuse chaos with passion, or neglect with destiny. You can choose differently, because the truth, however painful, has set you free. What I thought was love was only my wound. What I choose now is freedom. The shadow is that hidden, repressed, for the most part inferior, and guilt-laden personality, whose ultimate ramifications reach back into the realm of our animal ancestors. Jung's words are not meant to shame you, but to awaken you, because the shadow is not your enemy. It is your key. Healing does not come from running away from it. It comes from turning toward it, facing what you've buried, and daring to see yourself as whole. You've spent years projecting what you deny in yourself onto others. The softness you repress, you worship in her. The strength you deny, you chase in him. The tenderness, the rage, the vulnerability, whatever you refuse to acknowledge becomes the bait for attraction. But individuation, the process Jung saw as the purpose of life, means facing these rejected parts directly. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, but this time not flinching at the cracks. Instead, you lean in. You say, yes, this too is me. When you stop running from your shadow, it stops controlling you. What once pulled you blindly now becomes a source of power. Owning the wound is the second step. Instead of searching for someone to finish the story your parents left incomplete, you accept responsibility for carrying your own pain. You no longer hand someone else the script and hope they'll rewrite it. You take the pen back. This is where healing shifts from longing to action. You learn to give yourself the love you once begged for. You learn to set boundaries where you once collapsed. You learn to speak what you once swallowed. And in doing so, you no longer attract partners to complete you. You meet them as an equal. The wound doesn't vanish overnight, but by owning it, you stop bleeding on those who didn't cut you. And then something extraordinary happens. Attraction itself is reborn. Once the wound no longer chooses, you begin to feel drawn to different people. Those who offer respect instead of chaos, presence instead of absence, peace instead of storm. At first it may feel strange. Healthy love can seem quiet compared to the drama of repetition. But slowly you realize this is what real freedom feels like. You meet someone who doesn't trigger your old survival patterns. And instead of boredom, you feel relief. For the first time, love does not feel like walking into fire. It feels like coming home. This is the reward of meeting the shadow. Not the end of desire, but the beginning of true choice. No longer chained to your wounds, you are free to love from wholeness, not hunger. I face my shadow. I own my wound. I choose love born of peace. Man cannot stand a meaningless life. Jung wrote this not as despair, but as a call to find depth beyond suffering. You have stood in storms. You have chased chaos. You have mistaken wounds for love. But now clarity begins to dawn, and in clarity you discover something radical. Peace is not boring. Peace is power. The quiet power of clarity is unlike the noise of obsession. You no longer wake up wondering if she will text you back, if she will leave, if she will love you today and forget you tomorrow. The silence that once felt unbearable now feels steady. The calm that once felt dull now feels alive. Choosing peace is not settling. It is refusing to let the shadows dictate your life any longer. It is revolutionary to no longer crave the battlefield, but to choose the garden. And with this clarity comes a new love, a new life. Attraction after shadow integration feels different. It is steady, like a river that flows without rushing. It is safe, like a hand that does not let go. It is alive, not in the frantic rhythm of chaos, but in the quiet strength of presence. Imagine walking into a room with someone and not feeling fear. Imagine love that does not demand you to bleed for it, but simply invites you to rest. This is not the fire of repetition. This is the warmth of freedom. You are no longer the child searching for what was lost. You are the adult who has faced the shadow, owned the wound, and chosen differently. The cycle ends here. What I once called love was my wound. What I now call love is my freedom.